It's a pretty good crowd today. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Administrative Committee meeting from the Moscow City Council. I'm surrounded by Councilor Art Bedke, Councilwoman Ann Zabala, and Jen Piffner on behalf of city staff. This is September 24th, 2018. First item on our agenda is the approval of the Admin Committee minutes from September 10th.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Okay, awesome. Our second item is amended and restated Legacy Crossing Urban Renewal District Redevelopment Plan consideration. Mr. Belknap, this is quite a title.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. That's all right, just music for the day. That was kind of nice.
Good afternoon.
Hello. Good afternoon, Bill. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Gina, as you introduced, this is a proposed, I'll kind of shorten that a bit, a proposed amendment to an existing urban renewal plan that covers the Legacy Crossing district. So let me turn this on here. So for a little bit of background, as the council probably is likely aware, in the 2015 strategic plan and in the updates that have occurred since that time, the council identified the deteriorating public infrastructure in downtown as being a major challenge area. As you may recall, most of the hardscape and a lot of the furnishings and other improvements were installed back in the 1980-81 LID, and they are definitely showing their age and deteriorating fairly rapidly. During following joint meetings after the council's adoption of that strategic plan between the City Council and the Urban Renewal Board, the consideration of the expansion of the Legacy Crossing District a little over 300 feet to the east to include Main Street was identified as a priority project for the agency. Amending that boundary then would provide the opportunity for the agency to partner with the city in future downtown, streetscape, public infrastructure improvements, and enhancement projects as we move forward. But there are a number of steps that are involved, and they're all the same, whether you're creating a new district or you're amending an existing district plan. There are a number of steps you have to go through in that process. The first of which is that the agency has to complete an eligibility study of the area that reviews the area against 9 different criteria to make a determination of whether it's a deteriorated or deteriorating area that would be eligible for an urban renewal district to be created within. That was completed and transmitted to City Council on March 1st. The City Council then considers that eligibility study, and if they concur with it, the Council then approves it and authorizes the creation of the district plan. That happened before the Council on April 2nd of this year. The agency then prepares the district plan in accordance with the Council's direction and approves the transmittal of that document back to the City Council by resolution for the Council's consideration, and that was approved by the agency board on June 7th. The plan is then referred to the city's Planning and Zoning Commission for review for conformance with the city's comprehensive plan, and that was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission on July 11th, and then they approved their written finding of conformance on their meeting of July 25th. So that step was completed as well. So the final step then is for the City Council to consider the plan during a public hearing, and if the Council so chooses to do so, you have to approve the plan by ordinance, and that formally creates or amends the district in any associated tax revenue allocation area that's associated with that district. So that has been noticed and scheduled for October 1st, thus my report to you this afternoon. The plan document is intended to outline the purpose, goals, and objectives of the urban renewal project. It documents compliance with all the required actions from the eligibility study to the notice provisions of all those individual steps. The plan identifies the activities, improvements, and other work that the agency intends to undertake within the district, and it also has to include a review of the financial feasibility of the proposed activities and looking at the anticipated tax increment revenues that the district would generate to ensure that they would be adequate to fund the improvements that have been identified as being needed. It also discusses requirements related to any relocation of persons or business concerns, which is not something that we would anticipate, but it is a statutory obligation of the plan. And it also requires you to identify any specific properties that may be required by the agency as well. So the area that we were referring to is the area shaded in red. So the Legacy Crossing District is a 163-acre district. It really extends all the way almost over to Line Street, includes the core of the prior ag industrial area between campus and downtown, and actually also extends out along the Troy Highway some distance. But that boundary comes along the northerly right-of-way line of A Street until it hits the alley that is located just west of Main, and then it continues down the easterly alley line, jogs around the Moscow Hotel currently, continues on down until we reach 8th Street, and then it jogs over to the easterly right-of-way line and continues there kind of in the southeasterly direction from there. The area that we are proposing to include in the district as part of this action is the area shaded in red, so it does include the buildings located on the west side of Main Street, and it extends essentially to the easterly right-of-way line of Main, where the bulk of the improvements are needed, with some small extensions down some of the side streets. This extends to pick up the area of the fountain near the police station on 4th Street. But really, these little extensions down the side streets, because those curb bulb extensions go beyond the easterly right-of-way line of Main, those areas were extended as well. There's also a small extension located up here in the north area. There is a triangular-shaped property north of the CJ's building that the city acquired from ITD. That's been discussed as some sort of pocket park area. Also, this area was included in the city interior beautification plan for future landscape installations at that intersection of A and Main, so that area was included as well. So that is essentially the area that is under consideration and would be added to the Legacy Crossing District if the council chooses to approve the amended plan. As part of this process, we have to complete what's termed an infrastructure needs assessment, where we look at the area and we identify any needed public infrastructure improvements within the district. That list was completed initially back in 2007 for the adoption of the Legacy Crossing plan in 2008. So that list was updated to reflect current conditions. Projects have been completed, been taken off. New needs were identified, have been added into that overall list. So that was reviewed by the Public Works Department and by staff working through and reviewing the utility master plans and interviews with field operations staff. Those individual projects were organized into public investment categories that were developed through the recent strategic plan development for the agency. Those included community infrastructure, streetscape enhancements, community placemaking, and special projects. So just to kind of show an example, and within the plan there's a long list of projects that you can see, but these are the areas that were identified as street projects, whether those are future street construction to facilitate redevelopment or repair and rehabilitation, sorry about that, of existing roadways that are currently substandard or in very poor condition. There are also water system improvements. There's a large water distribution main along the north edge of the district that needs to be replaced, and some other areas to facilitate new development in the Legacy Crossing core area. And this purple line here on this larger view shows you the current boundary, and the green line here shows you the area that's proposed to be annexed as part of this process. There are sanitary sewer projects. There are replacements of some of our large sewer mains or some clay mains that are aged and need repair, as well as some storm sewer improvements due to some flooding that we get in the south end of downtown, where there's a large storm sewer main that's in 6th Street that is undersized and very flat in grade that causes some backup issues in the downtown area that need to be addressed as well. There are also streetscape improvements, and again, the large focus of this study was to look at the Main Street corridor and the improvements that would be required in that location. So there's a long list, which you can't read on the screen, of all those individual projects. They cover the general description, their location, how many units, so if it's a linear feet, and how many quantity, and what's the unit cost to get to the estimated cost, and what portion the agency would be contributing to those individual projects. So once we go through that list of those needed financial or needed infrastructure improvements, then we review that against the anticipated tax increment revenue that the district would generate. It is a general review. These are all prospective projects, and we are projecting on tax increment growth, but it's a general review of those anticipated revenues and would they be adequate to fund the identified improvements. It is intended to demonstrate overall feasibility, but not to necessarily dictate the exact means or methods that they would be funded, or the timing that those would occur. Those will all be managed by the agency as we move through the process. The method of funding may vary, and the agency may choose to either directly fund those infrastructure improvements, may use developer participation agreements, or may use bond financing depending upon the circumstances that may arise. There are a number of assumptions we have to assume. We do assume that base valuations within the project area would grow at a modest rate of 1% annually. That is just a little bit over half of the historical growth rate over the last 10 years in the area. For the 2019 to 2021 fiscal years, increment estimates for new projects already under construction have been estimated. So those that are under construction or in the planning phases, we have incorporated. Beyond that time period, we're just assuming an estimated growth rate of 9% for that new growth to occur. Since formation of the district, the new development has grown by over 28% annually. So this, we feel, is a very conservative assumption in the plan. We also assume that levy rates will be constant, and those will not change over the duration of the project as well. And these are the current levy rates of the individual taxing districts. Again, as we look at tax increment financing, new projects and development, those tax revenues that are applied to that new growth and new value are temporarily diverted to the Urban Renewal Agency to fund those needed public infrastructure improvements. And then once the district is closed, those are all returned back to the taxing districts as a whole. So a number of charts that are included in there are looking at the anticipated tax generation projections. This is a kind of a cumulative sum of tax increment to be generated. And so that shows about 14.4 million over the life of the district. We've identified about 12.1 million in needed infrastructure improvements. So we do feel there's going to be adequate revenues to be coming from the district to fund the needed public infrastructure improvements. So the study did conclude that it is expected that the district would generate sufficient revenues to fund those identified infrastructure needs. Finally, properties to be acquired by the agency in the document. While there are no particular properties that have been identified for acquisition, we do not intend to purchase additional private property for development. The agency does reserve the right to acquire any additional right-of-ways or access routes needed or around existing or planned rights-of-way for another public improvements, street widening, sidewalk improvements, and enhancement streetscape projects as well. And the agency does reserve the right to acquire property needed for the development of public improvements and public facilities. And this is really the same language that was in the plan initially when it was adopted in 2008. So as I mentioned, that approval process on June 7th, the Urban Renewal Agency Board of Commissioners approved the transmittal of the proposed amended and restated Legacy Crossing Plan to the City Council. As I mentioned before, on July 11th, the Plan and Zoning Commission reviewed it and found it to be in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan. And the proposal has been scheduled for a public hearing at the council's upcoming October 1st meeting. And I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Art, Ann, either one of you have any questions?
I have no questions. I've kind of been in this with the URA all along and have been very much in favor of it. So I'm good with receiving the report and moving it on to the council as a whole for a public hearing.
I agree with you. Again, a thorough presentation today. So thank you for that very much, Bill. So we're in agreement?
Yes.
All three of us? Okay. We will move it along. Thank you very much.
Good stuff.
Bill, nicely done. Okay, our third item is the 2019 Idaho's Child Passenger Safety Grant. Elisa Anderson, hello. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Whoops, excuse me.
You're being shadowed by someone in a uniform.
Yeah, I know.
Stalking.
Exactly.
I'd like to introduce Officer Megan Vincello.
Yep.
I asked her how to pronounce it correctly, and then I didn't. So. She is going to be stepping into the place that Maria Miller had in managing the Child Pedestrian Safety Car Seat Program. So she's joining me here today. Chief Fry is out of town, so it is just her and I. And this program has came before you several times in the past. Each year, ITD asks us to renew our contract and our program with them. And so what we have today before you is the proposal for the 2019 fiscal year. It's the state fiscal year. And as the report says, we've been participating in this program since 2003 and been the lead agency since 2011. Last year, we came forth with a proposal that was smaller than this year, but we have been being awarded consistently over the last 2 years additional funding. And actually, earlier this spring, they granted us an additional $10,000 to buy additional seats because there were some funds that hadn't been distributed or used throughout the state. And so it could happen again that they'll ask us to take some more money and buy some more seats and get them out there for kids to keep them safe. But for now, the proposal that was included in a draft format in your report is where we're at right now. I did want to note that there was one change, the match amount, which really isn't match, it's a contribution that the police department will provide is $1,200, not $1,500. And
okay.
I will make sure that that gets changed, changed for the city council packet. The reason why I put this in a draft format is we're finalizing some numbers within the proposal. However, what you're looking at for a gross amount of funding will not change, and that was the 14,000. The total proposal is going to be the 15,825. We'll subtract the 1,200. So
yep.
anything changes that we might make will not exceed what the amount is here before you today for grant funds, which would be the 14,325. We still need to make a few adjustments with the inventory and some maybe of the travel and those expenditures within the proposal. And then also, I just wanted to note that with this program, it is federally funded, and so at the very end of your document, you'll see that there were certifications and assurances that we have to sign and send off with every grant, and so those were included in your packet, and those are the federal assurances that make sure we're following all of our civil rights and ADA requirements. So, and I will let Megan just tell you a little bit about maybe how she plans to manage the program this year.
Well, I mean, I'm going to continue along the same path that we've been on. I'm not Marie. It's a lot of a learning process for me right now.
Sure.
I've just kind of been inundated with a whole bunch of stuff right at the end of her tenure. This year, she'll be continuing on as an instructor. So we will, instead of funding her out of her wages with the police department, we're going to be having to pay her now as an instructor, which is one of the reasons that this is going to be a little bit more that we're asking for this year. My idea for the program is to maintain what we've been doing, which is providing car seats for underprivileged families in the area and really the region. District 2 is quite a large area, so.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So Megan has two events coming up quickly for
Yeah.
car seats, and so she'll have her initiation in and hit the
Thanks.
ground running.
Yeah.
We have quite an inventory of seats right now, and so they're going to go through and see what they have for types and sizes, and then based upon what we have in inventory right now, those will be the types and kinds that we'll purchase for the upcoming year. And so
I could not be more in favor of this program. I think it's just such an awesome program. Do we have any questions at all?
Just one. When do we
Okay.
anticipate the funds coming in?
So the funds are based on a reimbursement, and so we have to spend the money and then get reimbursed. The program actually officially starts on October 1st.
Oh, okay.
And so it's not a lump sum. Karen from the police department puts together a reimbursement request, and we usually have 5 to 6 reimbursement requests, maybe sometimes up to 8 throughout the year based upon the funds spent.
Okay.
Cool.
Tiffany?
Yeah, just a quick question. You mentioned in 2011 we became the leading agency. What does that mean?
So it's the Northwest Car Seat.
Inland Northwest.
Inland
Car seat.
Northwest Car Seat. And it's a group of agencies that have come together and kind of they name themselves that. The reason why the wording is a little bit different this year is because there's been some changes in how the funding can be spent as far as Washington versus Idaho, because they have their own program. So the Inland Northwest Car Seat, was it
Alliance? They're
Yes,
just-
yes.
They didn't just call themselves car seats, I'm pretty sure.
Right, Inland Northwest Car Seat Alliance.
Hopefully
So,
not.
I
but
would
there
not
are
be in that
some
group.
Washington agencies in there, and so just because of how the guidelines are with the Idaho and Washington funding, we've been that lead agency. We're still going to be working with them as a partner, but maybe some of how the distribution works will be a little bit different this year.
Okay.
Is there any issue apt to come up with the federal budget process?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Good.
No, we've, as far as the police department had this in their budget for this upcoming year as a federal grant. And we track them through our single audit the way we always have. I don't anticipate anything different.
Well, and we're going to be meeting with ITD representatives on the 19th of October. We've requested that they come up just to make sure that we're, dotting our i's and crossing our t's, since this will be my first year and I'm very novice with this whole program. So when it comes down to funding and any anticipation, we can keep you updated for sure if there's any plans for anything different than
Okay.
what we
Cool.
anticipate.
Awesome.
Works for me.
Okay, do either one of you feel like this needs to be on regular because of the numbers, or we're good?
No, I'm
Okay,
good
let's
with it
do
on
consent with it then.
Okay,
Thank you.
great, thank
Welcome.
you.
You'll do fine, Megan. Don't worry.
Yes.
Okay, our fourth item is the HRC,
So we have
Human
a
Rights Commission.
Human Rights
request for
Commission.
statement. Yep, in support of the Idaho Proposition 2.
And as Chief Fry is out of town, he's the liaison to the Human Rights Commission, and so I'm bringing this forth. And we actually have Dr. Schmidt in the audience with us today. So the Human Rights Commission has put forth a proposal or a request for the council to make a statement issuing their support of Idaho Proposition 2. We've done these requests in the past. However, there's been some legislation change that came about this last session and was implemented in July of this year, whereby ballot measures, the council is prohibited from taking any advocate stand or any standpoint that advocates for or against a ballot measure. So our wonderful city attorney, Mia, has taken a peek at that, and she'll continue her research and come to a determination if this falls into that category or not.
Okay.
Of course, if it does fall into that category and the council is not able to advocate for something, each council member, mayor, whatever, could personally advocate or do what they'd like for their personal behalf. There's just no use of city resources that can be used in the promotion or of that type of process.
And I have full intentions of sending a letter for Proposition 2 in favor of it. It's a much needed thing.
And if we can do this, if Mia does determine we can do this as a city, then each one of us, whether you're a councilor or whatever, can write a letter.
Thank you, Mayor
So, and I
Lambert.
plan on doing that too, so.
Please, Dr. Schmidt. Hello, sir. How are you?
Very good.
Good.
Thank you for considering this. The other thing that I would encourage the city to consider is through the Association of Cities, because that is a non-governmental entity that you participate in that can advocate for certain issues. And there's many associations that have already chosen to do that. I don't know the process that you would go through.
I
That our
can
mayor
speak at
does.
that to you, Dan, because I'm on the board for District 2 of Association of Idaho Cities, and we are meeting on the 4th. So we will be discussing this in full detail.
I'd appreciate that consideration.
Absolutely. So it's been and I think that pretty much, I haven't heard anything with the other board members about it, what we talked earlier at our annual meeting, but it'll be kind of interesting. But I think probably as a board, we'll take a full stance on this, Dan. I would guess. So I'll know here in a week.
Well, let us know if there's any information or support you need in that consideration. That's what we're finding when we talk to the public, is there is some lack of understanding of the issue, and that's, to me, what we need to address.
For sure. All
So
right.
if it comes down to the city, this might be something for me to bring forward to us at our council meeting, but is there anything to prohibit the city from writing a letter to the AIC about this?
Well, you can check with your legal counsel, but the legal limitation is use of resources
Right.
to advocate
So that's
for.
a no.
And
So in other words, we can't
don't
have
allow
on
us
our own city letterheads and that type of thing, or we can't do that, the way I understand it.
Okay. Is it my understanding that our legal counsel will bring the
Yes,
final decision
we'll bring back
to
more
us on-
information at the council meeting, or beforehand if there's something that changes the need to take the matter up at a council meeting or something like that, but
Okay.
we'll absolutely keep you posted.
It is
just a
kind
little
of-
bit different than requests
is
we've
kind of
received in the past.
Indeed.
It is kind of strange and actually awkward that a city couldn't do that, but the Association of Idaho Cities can. That makes no sense to me, but, well, who knows?
well, you'll probably get that in statute next year.
This guy knows the legislative process too well, unfortunately.
Oh, Lord.
Okay, Mayor Lambert, Dr. Schmidt, thank you very much.
So I figure we should move the whole issue on to full council at our next regular meeting and get a more informed legal opinion.
Agreed.
Can do.
Okay, so that is our last item for the day for our agenda. There is, however, a report on the Moscow Modest Music Fest report. Jen?
Yes,
Wow.
so this
Modest
event, they had their inaugural event last year about this time, and it was a different type of street closure at that time, where it's the Humble Burger restaurant is working with local musicians and some out of the area musicians as well to put together this music fest. What we had worked on with them last year was closing a part of the street, and they are allowed to sell tickets within that portion.
Right.
However, because of a few caveats, the fact that you can stand on the other side of the fence, some of those types of things, access to businesses is still allowed. Wanted to bring back to the council, as we said we would do last year, an update on they are doing this again. Same type of setup. We didn't have any issues with the event last year. It was pretty amazing to watch, quite honestly, from a community events perspective. It's really nice when we have community members doing these amazing events in our town. So just wanted to let you know that that's happening again, and we stayed on top of the issue and looking at if there were any concerns. And none came forward, and
No noise ordinance,
They
rule
do-
breaking, nothing?
no,
That's
they usually do a
awesome.
noise permit, and they do, bulk of the is in the afternoon and early evenings, or inside businesses throughout the festival. It's really
Awesome.
that final day that's the outdoor portion, and it's late afternoon, so it doesn't go
That's great.
late into the evening on Sunday.
Good. Sounds like fun.
Good news.
All right, thank you for that report.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, so shall we adjourn?
Yes.
All right, awesome, thank you.